New to getting things done or looking for a quick refresher? These are the most important concepts from GTD by David Allen, summarized. Agenda. Talking points or actions you need to perform with someone else. Depending on your tool, you can keep separate agenda lists for individuals, communities, or other entities in your life, or alternatively, designate them with labels. Bottom-up versus top-down approach. GTD beginners can start by following one of two approaches. Dealing with the most mundane ground floor level of current activity and commitments first, to later discover higher horizons. This is what we call the bottom-up approach. Or going deep first, by uncovering personal and corporate missions, then defining critical objectives, and finally focusing on the details of implementation. This one is known as top-down. The bottom-up approach is usually more effective than top-down, because most people are already so enveloped in their day-to-day lives that starting with deeper levels is usually shrouded in a mist of the day-to-day that needs to be cleared up first. Calendar, a time-based category exclusively reserved for two things: actions that you need to perform at a specific time, and information that you need to take into account at a specific time. In GTD, the calendar is sacred territory. If you write something there, it must get done at that time. Checklist, a list of items that you need to check in order to properly carry out some tasks. Defer, postponing an action to a more appropriate future moment in time. Delegate, handing off the execution of a task to someone else because you're not the optimal assignee or you don't have time or resources to do it yourself. When you delegate an action, you're still accountable for the result. That's why you still need to keep track of it. And to do this, you'll add them to the waiting for list. This is where you track all your delegated actions. You're waiting for others to do them. If there are time commitments involved, add reminders to these tasks so you can check in if they're past due. 5 stages of mastering workflow.
There are 5 stages we go through as we try to manage our daily lives and work.
The first is capture, also called collect. Getting out of your head all the things that you consider incomplete in your world, whether they're personal or professional, big or small, urgent or timeless. Anything potentially significant to you should be captured on a trusted external system. Otherwise, it'll reside somewhere in your mental space, generating noise and stress due to the risk of potentially forgetting it. Clarify.
Once you've captured everything that's caught your attention, the next step is to empty your inbox, which does not mean doing everything that's in there. It just means defining what it is and deciding what you're going to do with it.
Clarifying always begins with asking the question, what is it? Is it actionable? In other words, can you do something about it? And is it something you should or want to do? If it's not actionable, you have 3 possibilities. If it's something you don't need and is of no value to you, you trash it. If it's something that doesn't require any action now, but you may need to do something in the future, you incubate it. And if it's potentially useful information that you might need later, you archive it as reference material or project support material. If it is actionable, you need to turn it into a next action, which prompts a further decision tree. If you are the one who is going to carry out the next action and it does not require more than 2 minutes, you should do it right now. This is called the 2-minute rule, and the reasoning behind it is that if doing a task will take less time than organizing it in your lists and tracking it, it's more efficient to do it the very first time you encounter it. If you're the one who's going to do it and it takes longer than 2 minutes, you defer it. If you are not the right person, you delegate it. In case the item is actionable, you also need to ask yourself if the result is going to be achieved when the next action is completed. If it is, you're done. But if not, you'll need to define the desired outcome and add it to the project list. It will serve as a reminder that this job is not yet finished when you've completed the action. Organize, putting everything in its right place according to its nature. This classification is directly derived from the definition of your stuff that you get from the previous stage, clarify, and is usually done via lists. Reflect.
You have to review your lists with a certain frequency in order to develop trust that everything is under control. This trust is essential for keeping your system up to date and functional.
Engage.
Deciding what is the best action for you to do right now and doing it.
To answer the question, what can I do now? You can use the 4 criteria model for choosing actions. Context.
A context is a condition that needs to be met for you to be able to perform an action. Now, they are personal, but they can usually be placed into one of the following categories:
Tools, places, or people, and include things like calls to make, home, computer, friends, colleague, etc.
What I found, though, is that a lot of people confuse these example contexts as obligatory. You don't have to do it by the book. You've got to develop context that makes sense to you, and also realize that they're not static. As you evolve, as your life conditions change, your contexts are also going to evolve. They may change. You may need to remove some, add some new ones, rename some. That's okay. I've done it all myself. And it's essential to treat these contexts as the dynamic elements that they are. Once you are in a state where you have your contexts map out and they make sense to you, what you can do next is filter your next actions list by the context you're currently in, and you'll be able to focus within that same state, churn out a lot of more tasks than you would if you went by the classic project-based approach, for example, having to filter, scroll through everything manually.
Time. The time you have available for doing something before you have to do something else. For example, if you have a meeting or you're visiting someone in 30 minutes, your actual next actions list will be reduced to those actions that require less than half an hour. Energy. This is never 100% consistent and is influenced by your mood, any physical ailments, or how tired you are. Make sure you commit to lower intensity tasks that require less creative horsepower if you're not feeling your best. Priority.
After filtering based on time and energy, the relative priority of each one of those tasks that meet these conditions will decide which one you'll choose to engage with.
This priority is determined by multiple factors: responsibilities, goals, values, etc. These all play into developing your intuition, which you're going to be best off trusting when deciding what to do. Horizontal control.
Horizontal control refers to the coherent management of your day-to-day. In other words, your ongoing activities and projects.
This is where digital productivity tools make all the difference, as they come with list functionality to separate and organize, as well as reminders to prompt actions. For this horizontal control to make sense, you'll also need to lean on a higher perspective, also called vertical control.
Vertical control, on the other hand, refers to the alignment between your daily activities and your deeper core values.
Incomplete. Anything that you think ought to be different than it currently is, and that you have any level of internal commitment to changing. Work. Anything you do to get something to become different from what it currently is. Importantly, there's no distinction made here between personal and professional, because you cannot be effective at work if the rest of your life is in chaos. Mind sweep. Capture everything that's on your mind, an overall scan of everything holding your attention right now, and put it in one single trusted place called the inbox. This is the most impactful and time-consuming for first-timers, but it is useful to repeat every now and then as mental clutter builds up. Physical gathering, the physical component of the mind sweep. Search your physical environment for anything that doesn't belong where it's at and put it in your in-basket. Incompletion trigger list.
This is the incompletion trigger list that David Allen recommends you go through every time you need to do a sweep. Pause the video now in order to view it.
Incubate. Saving anything you're still unsure about whether it requires any action, but is interesting enough to consider potentially useful in the future. You can park these in the someday maybe list or the tickler file. Someday maybe list. A list of things you might want to do at some point, but not now, and things you're not sure you want to commit to yet. Review this list periodically if you want to get the most out of it. I review mine at least once a month to prevent it from becoming a pseudo trash can, and I've pulled out some useful ideas that did become relevant months later. Tickler file. A list for incubating items that you don't need to remember until a specific point in time in the future.
Basically, all your reminders bundled in one place.
Mind like water, a stress-free state of control. You're able to respond appropriately to whatever shows up, without giving it more or less attention than it needs. Natural planning model, the way humans plan projects from small to large. NPM makes these intuitive processes explicit to ensure steps aren't skipped. First, you define your purpose and principles. Why are you doing this? What's the objective? Then you envision the outcome. What makes this a success? You get ideas. How could you approach this? You organize everything. Is it parallel or sequential? Who does what, when, and where, etc. This is where more advanced to-do apps can really help you. You identify the next actions. What's the first thing you can do now to get things moving? Non-actionable item. Something you cannot do now, like trash, incubated items, or information like reference or support material. Open loop. Anything that requires a resolution. The fewer open loops you have, the less stressed you'll be. Reference material. Information you want to have access to on an as-needed basis, even if it's not in support of an ongoing project, like a copy of your ID. Reminder. A nudge to move forward with something that requires your attention. 6-level model for reviewing your own work. Review your life and establish principles that govern your decision-making with this hierarchical model of priorities. Each level should be in alignment with the one above it. Purpose. What gives your life meaning? Vision. How would you like things to be in the long term? Goals. How would you like things to be in the short term? Area of focus. What roles do you play in your life? What are you responsible for? This can be as big as parents or as small as your weird rock collection hobby. Project. an outcome that takes more than one step to complete. Next action, the very next thing you can do to make progress on something with no other tasks or time blocking your ability to get started. Next actions list, the list of actions you can perform now, regardless of what project they belong to, organized by context to group similar next actions and get things done more quickly. Project list, an index, an overview of all pending outcomes that require more than one action to achieve. Having it all in one place makes reviewing a breeze, especially with to-do apps that support nested lists or folders. Project support material, information that helps you achieve an outcome. Stuff.
Stuff is anything that pops up in your world that you have not defined yet. If you've been paying attention to this video, you'll know what to do with it. First, you'll capture it, and then you'll clarify it.
Threefold model for evaluating daily work. On a given workday, you're usually doing one of these three things: defining your work, getting clarity on what needs to be done through clarifying and reflecting, doing the work that is already defined, engaging with next actions, or doing the work as it shows up, taking care of anything that lands on your table as soon as it shows up. This is what being busy is, as opposed to getting things done. Avoid this. Weekly review, a weekly ritual to achieve full clarity and focus as you inevitably lose some of it throughout the week. Check out how I do my weekly review in this video.